y'all hear what she said? Hey, LaMay again. Today we're reacting to a video from Malik Kashad's channel called Why the New Girls Can't Sing. So let me tell you, this video has been stalking my feed for 2 years now. And let's just go ahead and jump right into it.
20-something years ago, a 20-year-old sang like this. No matter what they may say, your babe can't buy. Today, a 20-something-year-old sings like this.
Ever happened to me, ever happened to me, ever happened to me. Why did I pull it, trigger, pull it, trigger, pull it?
Wait, so we starting off like this? What? What is that? Who is that? And what is that girl over there in the white doing?
I am not saying that the new girls don't sound good, nor am I saying that they don't make great music. But what I am saying is that there has been a change in the quality and standard of singing across all 20-year-olds sounding like this. To now sounding like this.
Tuesday and Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. I just keep.
She sounds like that guy. Yeah, I don't know. I think he's from like Vietnam, possibly. And he does like the numbers in the alphabets. He's like 45, 1, 2, 3. And you know, he's with Snoop Dogg and stuff. Yeah.
Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Practice. It takes 10,000 hours to be considered an expert or a master at a task. The old school girls achieved their 10,000 hours before they even thought about touching a major stage. And they would get those hours one or two ways: school and church.
This is the absolute 1000% truth. True for me, true for many that I've worked with. And yeah, that's what it is.
1, 2.
Music also became a part of the public school learning curriculum. So students in public school systems were learning how to sing, read, write, and compose music from a trained music professional.
Every morning, every Monday through Friday, every morning there was a class from 9 o'clock to 10:30. So that meant that I had for 4 years, a voice lesson 5 days a week, plus my voice lesson on Saturday.
You know, that is just really hitting home for me because we would look so forward to music class. We used to have it twice a week. Shout out to Miss Nickel. Shout out. And it just is something that you can tell is missing with the kids now. We learned the fundamentals. We learned do, re, mi, and tapping out the patterns. Maybe it was just where I went to school, but like ta, ta, ti, ti, ta, to learn like the rhythms and things and how to sing in harmonies. And it was just so much fun. And the worst part for the parents was the music recorders that we used to play, those little playing Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah, that is what's missing.
6 days a week. Who ever heard of that? That doesn't happen these days.
As a part of her school curriculum, Grace Bumbury got a 1.5-hour voice lesson every day. So let's do some math. 1.5 hours a day times 5 days a week, that's 7.5 hours. There are 4 weeks in a year, that's 30 hours a month. A school year lasts approximately 9 months, that's 270 hours a school year. She did this for 4 years, so that is 1,080 hours of practice. Not to mention, Grace Bumbury and singers like Phyllis Hyman were also a part of their school choirs and choruses.
Yes, that's where it was refined, because when I went to school, you had a choice of being in the band or being in the chorus. And I think once we got to a certain grade, we could do both. Or for the kids who weren't that musically inclined, they just had kind of like a basic music theory, a music appreciation class. And we weren't just singing whatever. They were literally teaching us. Shout out to Mr. Leak.
Many years ago, school choir and chorus was just as competitive and actively funded like school sports. These choirs and choruses would compete around the countries against each other for trophies and prizes. The market for this was so strong that many of these choirs and choruses would also cut records. And that's where you'll find singers such as Martha Wash making their earliest recordings.
Please forgive us, Lord. We didn't know it was you.
Amen.
But to do school choir and chorus also requires more practice. So, say for instance, you're practicing with your choir 2 hours a day, 4 days a week. That's an additional 8 hours of practice a week, which means that's 32 hours a month, 288 hours for a school year, and an extra 1,440 hours that you've gotten over your school career. So you have your 1,080 hours from music class, your 1,152 hours from high school chorus class. So by the time you get your diploma, you have gotten over 2,000 hours of training and development for free.
Now, I have to say that these numbers are a little stretched because by the time 80s kids were in school, we still got a lot of practice in, but there was no way we were doing this every day because we also had art class, we had phys ed, we had a lot of other classes, and we would rotate them. So we may have had half or a little less than half the hours they did, but there's still a big difference in how kids from my generation, late generation Xers, early millennials, our ability compared to the ability or lack thereof of some of these girls today.
The other way singers would acquire their hours would be through church. A traditional church music training is on par with a music education. And here's how. When Europeans brought Africans over through slavery, they introduced them to Christianity and the music of the European church, which by nature is classical. So if you listen to traditional gospel music, at its root, you will see and hear that the music and techniques of gospel and classical music are very similar.
Just the time I need him, he's always near.
In these churches, there was someone called a minister or a director of music. An example of this would be Whitney Houston or Maddie Moss Clark. This person was usually from a music education background and was in charge of picking all the music that would be sang in the church.
And let me tell you, they were not easy on us. Some of the practices that they used back then to make sure that their choir sounded the best may not be so acceptable today, but they worked us hard from little kids. I'm talking 4 or 5 years old. They had this ability where they could pick out one voice that was off key out of 30 people. Seriously. And it was just something amazing to be able to be a part of and have that as a foundation growing up and learning how to sing.
In addition to this, they will work with choir members on vocal technique and also piano and music theory to get the Sunday music right.
I'm tired, Lord, but oh, when I reach, when I reach that blessed, Lord, when I reach that blessed.
So you have your singers like Aretha Franklin and the Clark sisters who acquired thousands of hours of musical training because they were in church literally from birth. So you have your schoolgirls and your church girls. And then you have your singers such as Leona Mitchell and Dionne Warwick, who sang in both school and church.
I honestly think that was the case. I don't know if there was a one versus the other back then because church was not just a religious thing. It was also the cultural thing to do. And I don't know that too many people were one or the other back then.
That's hours and hours of training. So, no matter a family's socioeconomic status, many of them kept a musical instrument in the house because it was through music that many families bonded. Just think about how many singing families were cutting records together in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
And here's the thing. If you weren't necessarily in one of these famous gospel singing groups where I feel like every family had one, a cousin somewhere from down south, third cousin, whatever. But if you weren't, these records were playing on Sunday morning. And I'm talking about in my generation, in the 80s and 90s. It may have been AM radio or your mother or grandmother playing them, while they were cooking breakfast, but we still heard all of these songs. And then once we got to church, the old folks would always start off the service stomping and clapping and singing them songs from way back in the day. A lot of them from slave times with no music. Wouldn't miss a note, wouldn't miss a beat. That whole church would be rocking. And I appreciate it so much more now as an adult. But as a kid, it was just like, oh, here we go. I'm ashamed to say that, but it was just, it's not something that today, that I'm about to get all emotional. It's not something today that I could even buy. I could not buy that. There's no one selling a course. There's no one training you for this in this way anymore. And I'm not sure we'll ever be able to get that back.